Welcome. Today, we're jumping into a framework called Understanding by Design, or UBD for short. It's a really powerful way to think about planning, one that basically flips the whole traditional process on its head, and it all starts with one simple but really important question. Seriously, think about this for a second. What is the difference between knowing something and truly understanding it? I mean, a student can memorize a ton of facts, right? Dates, formulas, vocabulary words, but does that mean they get it? A student who knows can spit back information on a test, but a student who understands, well, they can do so much more. They can explain an idea in their own words, see how it connects to other things, and, this is the big one, they can apply it to a totally new situation. And that gap, that space between just knowing and really understanding, that's exactly what UBD is built to close.
But to see why UBD is such a game changer, we first have to look at how planning can sometimes go off the rails. The creators of UBD, Wiggins and McTighe, have this great term for it. They call it the twin sins of design.
Okay, so the first sin is activity-oriented planning. You know what I'm talking about. This is when a unit is basically just a string of fun hands-on activities. That classic Pioneer Day comes to mind, where students are churning butter and making corn husk dolls. Now, the activities are engaging for sure, but what's the big takeaway? Are they learning about resilience and innovation, or just that churning butter is, really hard? Then you've got the second sin, coverage-oriented planning. This is that relentless march through the textbook, a mad dash to get from Chapter 1 to Chapter 12 before the semester ends, often without ever stopping to think about what the most important ideas really are.
And this brings us to the core of the solution. The traditional way is you pick a topic, you list some activities, and then, at the very end, you slap an assessment on it. It's kind of like planning a road trip by just jumping in the car and starting to drive. But UBD flips that completely with what's called backward design. You start by picking your destination. What do you want students to understand and be able to do? Then, you figure out how you'll know they've arrived. What's the evidence of that learning? And only then, only after those two things are clear, do you plan the route, the lessons and activities that'll get them there. It's such a simple shift, but trust me, it changes everything.
So let's break down how this actually works, starting with stage 1. This is all about getting absolutely crystal clear on your goals before you even think about a single lesson plan or handout. It's about defining that destination with real precision.
And the ultimate destination, the big prize here, is what UBD calls a transfer goal. This has nothing to do with just passing the unit test. It's about what students can do with what they've learned, months, maybe even years down the road. Can they take the skills and knowledge from your class and actually use them to solve a new problem or navigate a complex situation in the real world? That right there is the true measure of success.
So how do we get them to that transfer goal? We start by focusing on these big, powerful ideas called enduring understandings. Think of these as the moral of the story, the main takeaway that you want to stick with students forever. For example, in an English class, an enduring understanding might be that great literature explores universal themes. Then we frame the whole unit around essential questions. These are juicy, open-ended questions that don't have a single right answer you can find on Google. They're designed to provoke thought and guide students toward discovering that enduring understanding for themselves. Okay, so you've got your destination locked in. Stage 2 is all about your GPS. How are you going to track your students' progress? How will you know if they've actually arrived at that deep understanding you were aiming for? This is where we have to start thinking like an assessor, right from the get-go. I absolutely love this quote from McTighe because it just nails the spirit of assessment in UBD. A single test? That's just one snapshot in time. It doesn't tell the whole story. But a photo album? That gives you a much richer, more complete picture of learning. It's a collection of different kinds of evidence, projects, observations, quizzes, conversations, gathered over the entire unit. There's a huge difference between answering a multiple-choice question about the rules of basketball and actually playing in a game, right? To see if someone really understands, not just recalls, we need the classroom equivalent of the game. And that's what we call authentic performance tasks. These are complex challenges that ask students to do the subject, to apply their knowledge in a realistic scenario.
And here's an awesome little tool to help build those tasks. It's the GRASPS acronym. It gives you a great structure for creating a really authentic context for student work. You give them a real-world goal, a role to play, an audience to present to, a situation to deal with, a final product or performance to create, and clear standards for what success looks like. So instead of just writing an essay about nutrition, a student might be a menu advisor for a summer camp with the goal of creating a healthy menu for a specific budget to be presented to the camp director. See how that just totally changes the game? Let's look at a concrete before and after to really see this in action. Here's a pretty typical Pioneer Life unit. You've got reading the textbook, making a memory box, the whole Prairie Day thing. It all seems fine, maybe even fun, but what's the actual point? What is the deep understanding students are supposed to have at the end? It's not really clear. This is a perfect example of that activity-oriented planning we talked about earlier. Now, check out the transformation. With UBD, the exact same topic is anchored by a big idea, like successful pioneers rely on courage, ingenuity, and collaboration. It's driven by a big question, like why do people move? And the final assessment? It's an authentic task, like creating a museum exhibit to correct common myths about pioneer life. All those fun activities are still there, but now they have a purpose. They are all designed to equip students for that final, meaningful performance. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, Stage 3. It's only now, after we've figured out our destination in Stage 1 and our evidence in Stage 2, that we finally get around to planning the day-to-day journey. This is where we design the lessons and activities that will actually get our students where they need to go. The WHERTO framework is a fantastic guide for this stage. Think of it as a checklist to make sure your lessons are as effective as they can be. We need to let students know where the unit is going and why it matters. We have to hook them from the very beginning. We need to equip them with the right skills and let them experience the ideas firsthand. We also have to give them chances to rethink their ideas and revise their work. And of course, we constantly evaluate their progress. And notice that T is for Tailor. This framework bakes in the need to differentiate and meet the needs of every single learner. So you go through all 3 stages. What's the result? What's the big payoff? Well, it's pretty huge. It's a fundamental shift away from just trying to cover content and toward cultivating real, lasting understanding. The benefits really do speak for themselves. You get more engaged learning because students actually see the purpose in what they're doing. They're not just jumping through hoops, they're solving real problems. They learn to use their knowledge in meaningful ways. And here's the kicker. Study after study shows that this approach leads to better performance not just on those cool, authentic tasks, but on traditional standardized tests too. And that brings me to a super important point, especially for anyone worried about high-stakes tests. Here's a little secret about those exams. The hardest questions, the ones that really separate the scores, are almost never about recalling some random fact. They're the questions that require students to transfer what they know to a new problem or a new context. And since the entire UBD framework is designed to build that exact skill, the ability to transfer learning, it's one of the best ways to prepare students for the toughest parts of any assessment they'll face. Ultimately, UBD isn't just a bunch of templates. It's a new way of thinking about our role as educators. This core idea says it all. We shift from being a purveyor of content, just delivering information, to becoming a coach of understanding. Our job is to design amazing learning experiences, give really specific feedback, and guide students as they learn to make meaning for themselves. The Understanding by Design framework really gives us a powerful map for this journey. It hands us the tools to design learning that actually sticks. And that just leaves us with one final question to think about. How will you coach for understanding?